Our journey starts here at Fort Beaufort, on the banks of the Cat River. From this historic town, we travel east, past Alice, and then north, up the Kumi River Valley to the resort town of Hogsback. Finally, the road turns west through the Amatola Mountains to the town of Balfour. This is the Maqoma route. It winds its way through some of the most beautiful landscapes in South Africa, but it is also a route into the past. The Maqoma route tells a story of conflict, both physical and spiritual. The conflict for land and the conflict for the souls of its people. Along this winding route lie the remains of many British forts. Fort Armstrong, Fort Mitchell, Fort Fordyce, and the Martello Tower in Fort Beaufort, a defensive chain built to secure land the British had taken from the Amaxhosa. For nearly 100 years, the Amaxhosa battled the relentless advance of the most powerful army in the world. The landscape is dotted with the remnants of these battles, like the Christmas Day Memorial Site at the head of the Kumi Valley. Here, on Christmas Day in 1851, 27 men from the village of Auckland were killed. The colonial historians painted this battle as an unprovoked act of savagery. But these villages had been recently established for British soldiers on the most prized of Amaxhosa land. It was this battle for heartland that defined the life of Chief Jongumsobomvu Maqoma, who gives this route its name. Under the leadership of Maqoma's father, King Ngqiga, the Amagagabe were forced off much of their best land. Maqoma spent his life fighting to win back these lands. It is here in the Waterkloof that one of his most famous victories was won. In 1850, the conflict between British and Amaxhosa was at its most bloody. This was the War of Mlanjeni, the 8th frontier war of dispossession. Maqoma and his warriors had occupied the Waterkloof, close to their ancestral home in the Cat River Valley. British troops had made sporadic attempts to expel them, but they remained defiant. In September 1851, 600 soldiers under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Fordyce climbed a narrow path to the summit. Fordyce was expecting an overnight victory. As they reached the summit, the sound of a gong rang out. It was a signal from Maqoma to attack. As the echoes died away, Maqoma himself appeared, riding a grey-white horse. The real battle of the Waterkloof had begun. For 17 long months, the British trekked back and forth across this landscape in search of their quarry. But Maqoma's warriors were elusive, appearing from nowhere to launch lightning attacks and then vanishing. They remained masters of the Waterkloof. During one of these operations, Fordyce himself was shot dead. Maqoma is celebrated to this day as the Leopard of Fordyce. Unable to defeat the Amaxhosa warriors in the Waterkloof, the British turned their attention to the Amaxhosa homesteads around the Amatola Mountains. Here, huts were burned, cattle stolen, and crops destroyed. It was a campaign of genocidal proportions. In the face of such brutality, Maqoma was finally forced to surrender. He was imprisoned on Robben Island, where he died in exile in 1873. But the Maqoma route is not only about military battles. This area has nurtured great writers, thinkers, and leaders. This old house in Balfour was once home to Olive Schreiner, best known for her novel, Story of an African Farm. Olive Schreiner was also an outspoken campaigner for racial and gender equality. She was not alone in her convictions. Nearby, at the Herzog Church, the missionary James Reed preached a non-racial vision of equality to his Khoi, Amaxhosa, and colored congregation. Missionaries like James Reed and Dr. John Philip campaigned tirelessly against the British exploitation of black and colored labor. The history of missionary contact is a complex and difficult one, but it also forged a powerful new fusion of Christian doctrine and African spirituality. Many of the churches founded by early Amaxhosa converts flourish to this day. And here at Hilltown, Lovedale, and Fort Hare, the powerful possibilities of cultural exchange were explored. In these classrooms, a new class of black intellectuals was developing that would change history. Men like the composer, Dr. John Knox Bokwe, and the writer John Tengo Jabavu, founder and editor of Imvo Zabansundu, symbolized the new class of Africans educated in the European tradition. Schooled in the systems of their oppressors, the graduates of these institutions would lead Africa's liberation movements of the 20th century. Nelson Mandela received his early education at these institutions. He attended Lovedale and matriculated at Hilltown. More than a century after Maqoma's death on Robben Island, Mandela would achieve what Maqoma never did, lasting peace and freedom for his people. Our journey begins with Maqoma and ends with Mandela. Maqoma suggests the beginning of a tradition that continues to this day, of resistance to oppression, of the assertion of dignity, of the unwavering insistence on respect.